Dr. Anthony Fauci faced some backlash after declaring over the weekend that it's, quote, too early to tell whether or not Americans can gather for Christmas this year. Recent comment proves yet again he is the lab coat tyrant that I've been warning you about and that people should ignore. But we can't because he's still being Fauci. Friends, it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Little Fauci running around, making sure the kids are naughty or nice or whatever. You know, he's the Grinch, he's Santa, depends who you ask. He wants to make sure that you don't think you can have a normal holiday. Vaccinated, even boosted up, vaccinated, boosted, and have natural immunity. Is that enough? Well, probably. It depends. Fauci's not really sure. Here's what he said over the weekend when asked if we could just plan on having a normal Christmas season this year in this country.
But we can gather for Christmas, or it's just too soon to tell?
You know, Margaret, it's just too soon to tell. We've just got to concentrating on continuing to get those numbers down and not try to jump ahead by weeks or months and say what we're going to do at a particular time. Let's focus like a laser on continuing to get those cases down. And we can do it by people getting vaccinated, and also in the situation where boosters are appropriate to get people boosted, because we know that they can help greatly in diminishing infection and diminishing advanced disease.
Focus like a laser on the booster. Right. This is where Fauci is on all this stuff, of course. He can't say, you know what, we can all just assume that we're going to have a normal Christmas this year because, you know, vaccinated or not, we've sort of all made our choices at this point, and it's let it ride time, as in getting back to normal life, taking all of these mitigations and restrictions and everything and saying enough is enough. That's what we should do. We should all be told that that's where we're heading for the Christmas season. But Fauci wasn't willing to say that, and you have to wonder why. You have to be willing to ask that question. And here is little Fauci after he said this, and a lot of people, including me, were very upset about it, claiming instead of saying, look, I misspoke or I didn't, say this well, what I meant to say is, he claims that the bad people took him out of context because, sure, everything will be fine this year. Kind of. Is it?
I also said something over the weekend that was taken completely out of context. I was asked, what could we predict for this winter, for like December and Christmas?
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I say you hold off on that. I said, we don't know, because we've seen slopes that went down and then came back up. The best way to assure that we'll be in good shape as we get into the winter would be to get more and more people vaccinated. That was misinterpreted as my saying we can't spend Christmas with our families, which was absolutely not the case. I will be spending Christmas with my family. I encourage people, particularly the vaccinated people who are protected, to have a good, normal Christmas with your family.
Particularly the vaccinated to have a happy Christmas. The rest of you can go Fauci yourselves. But, if you're vaccinated, you get to have a normal Christmas. Look, you just got caught here in another moment of Fauciism, which is where you essentially always take the position that we might have to put more restrictions in place because there's never really a going back to normal. It's more important that there's the power to tell people what to do than to allow people to live their lives. And people are pushing back on this. They're saying, well, hold on a second. We have now substantially more than half the country is vaccinated. You're talking about those who are at high risk. Over 90% of senior citizens in this country are vaccinated. So what are we so worried about still? And do we really care if cases rise, as long as this is a very important argument? If cases rise, but hospitalizations and deaths stay at a relatively low level, shouldn't society go back to normal? Fauci wants you to know that, no, the virus running through society and people getting sick but beating it, and that's fine, not acceptable in his mind.
As a physician and as a scientist and a public health person, that I think it is not entirely correct to make this very strong gap and dichotomy between waning immunity that gets you waning for protection against hospitalization and death, and waning immunity against infection, mild to moderate disease. It is an assumption that is okay to get infected and to get mild and moderate disease as long as you don't wind up in the hospital and die. And I have to be open and honest. I reject that. I think we should be preventing people from getting sick from COVID, even if they don't wind up in the hospital.
Oh, so people that are going to beat the virus very quickly, we should be worried. But why? On what basis do we see this? Where's the baseline of all of this? Well, you have to understand, Fauci has a very different perspective on America than those of you watching this program most likely do. He doesn't think that there's this individuality, individual choice and freedom that has to be weighed into these kinds of decisions. It's whatever the health bureaucrats think. You, in fact, are being told outright by people like Fauci that you have to give up your individual rights so that they can tell you what you can and cannot do. Here he is saying just that.
But you are a member of society. And as a member of society, reaping all the benefits of being a member of society, you have a responsibility to society. And I think each of us, particularly in the context of a pandemic that's killing millions of people, you have got to look at it and say there comes a time when you do have to give up what you consider your individual right of making your own decision for the greater good of society.
For the greater good, said every totalitarian, said every tyrant all throughout history. You know, just shut up and do what you're told. By the way, how are things going with all the mitigation and vaccination strategy and everything? You'll notice they're not blaming Florida anymore for murdering people in the streets with COVID. They've moved away from that because Florida cases are down 60% in the last few weeks, dropping off a cliff. Gosh, what happened? I guess something changed. Maybe the virus is seasonal. Massachusetts, very blue, very vaccinated. 67% of Massachusetts' population is fully vaccinated, is having 4 times the COVID cases this September than it did last September with no vaccination out there. According to the Department of Public Health, Massachusetts saw more than 45,000 new infections in September. A year earlier, in September of 2020, the total COVID case count for the month was 12,151. And for those who are wondering, I think it's also worth pointing out that right now in the state of Massachusetts, almost a third, a little under a third of hospitalized individuals with COVID are fully vaccinated. Not 1%, not 1/1000th of a percent, something like 25 to 30% of people in the hospital in Massachusetts have COVID. Does that align with the public health guidance of the Fauciites that you get the shot and you're going to be okay, you don't have to worry about hospitalization? We know that it doesn't stop you from getting the virus, that's been clear, but they told us it was very unlikely. How unlikely can it be when you have a pretty sizable percentage overall of hospitalizations in a highly vaccinated state are people who are fully vaccinated? Does Fauci have an answer to this? Does anyone even ask the question? No. Shut up and get the shot, they say. And they'll have more answers for you down the line. Don't ask any questions. All right, the Texas National Guard is gearing up for yet another massive migrant caravan approaching the U.S.-Mexico border. We'll have an update on that crisis with our friend Ned Ryan when we come back. I want to talk to you about a potential investment opportunity. If you've ever thought about investing in real estate, I want you to take me up on this recommendation right now. Visit doneforyoubuck.com where you can learn more about my friends at Done For You Real Estate. If you haven't checked them out yet, let me make this easy for you. These guys have found a way to make real estate investing straightforward, and their system flat out works. I know because I'm using it. It allows everyday, hardworking Americans like you and me to finally own investment real estate without all the risk and difficulty of doing it on your own. Look, I can't explain every piece of this in just a quick commercial, so how about this? If you visit doneforyoubuck.com, at the top of that page is a podcast interview that I did with Done For You Real Estate, and you can hear about my personal experience with their company in my own words. I mean, I'll tell you about it in detail, picking the city, the house, getting the broker, the loan, even getting a tenant in place so I get cash flow coming to me every month. Visit doneforyoubuck.com, listen to the podcast interview, and give my friends a chance to show you what they can do for you. CEO of American Majority, Ned Ryan, joins us coming up. It doesn't end, does it? U.S. officials are reportedly preparing for what could be the biggest surge in migrant traffic at our southern border, illegal migrant traffic yet. estimating between 350 and 400,000 migrants will cross into the country throughout the month of October. Texas Governor Greg Abbott took to Twitter, writing, Texas National Guard is gearing up at the border for increased caravans attempting to cross the border caused by Biden's open border policy. They're working with the Texas Department of Public Safety to seal up surge locations at the border and arrest trespassers. 10 GOP governors are also having to show their support for the Lone Star State, or willing to show their support, by joining Governor Abbott on highlighting the crisis at the southern border with the hopes that the Biden administration may finally take some action here to do something about the border. Ned Ryan, CEO of American Majority, joins me now to talk about this unfolding disaster. Ned, I feel like it's just hard to even comprehend this for a lot of folks. We are, based on numbers we're already seeing, because the migrant caravans are moving, we are on track for what could be the biggest month of illegal crossings in the United States in 20 years, perhaps ever, at 400,000 is the estimate.
Well, this is all intentional. I mean, people keep on asking, why isn't the Biden administration doing something? I mean, they made it very clear when they came into office, Buck, that they were going to completely dismantle all of Trump's immigration policies, and they've succeeded. This is a crisis of the Biden administration's making. It has been intentional every step of the way. You know, and to highlight some of the things that are taking place, August of last year, of 2020, there were about 47,000 illegal crossing attempts. Only 10 were released into the interior of the U.S. This August, fast forward a year, Buck, August of 2021, 195,000 were apprehended by the U.S. Border Patrol. Of that, almost 44,000 were released into the interior in a catch and release. And the amazing thing is, Buck, the Biden administration has basically told the Supreme Court, we don't care what you say. Back in August, by a motion of 6-3, they said that you actually have to do what the federal judge in Texas said and re-implement, remain in Mexico while any immigration proceedings might take place to see if you can actually legally enter this country, have any justification for that. The Biden administration has been stalling for about 7 weeks. This is all intentional, Buck, and I think they will continue to do it. And I would argue there's a couple of reasons they're doing this. One, they think there'll be political power in this. You bring in all of these who will then be dependent upon the state and upon social welfare programs. You're going to increase the Democrat voting base. And then you have the Chamber of Commerce types on the Republican side that are refusing to fight it because they think they're going to get cheap labor. The ones that are getting the short end of the stick, the American taxpayer.
Here's Senator Marco Rubio, who is pointing out just how diverse the group of, in terms of nationality, the group of illegal migrants actually is. Here's what he says.
We have another looming migratory crisis on the horizon. I had a chance yesterday to talk to a number of the foreign ministers in Latin America who all pointed to this and all expressed like a lot of frustration that the Biden administration is just ignoring it and not doing anything about this. The first, for example, in Colombia, there are anywhere from 20 to 25,000 Haitian migrants in Colombia right now. And all of them are headed here at some point. Panama has about 60,000 or so in some point of transit, either just came through or still there or are on their way in. There's a bunch of countries in Latin America. We don't know the full number, but it's in the high tens of thousands of migrants from Haiti and other parts of the world who are headed to the United States at some point.
You know, Ned, we were told earlier on during the Biden administration, oh, it was because of U.S. policy in Central America. So, you know, it's kind of our fault or something. You get people coming from all over the world, and they're basically doing this because they realize we got a big open door at our southern border.
Oh, I mean, the Biden administration basically from day one was flashing a bright neon sign down south saying we essentially have open borders, de facto open borders, because of what we've done on a variety of policies from the Trump administration. You know, two things that are really troubling to me, Buck. One is, you know, is the Middle East, obviously, with Afghanistan and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. You know, how do we know, again, that they're not going to be slipping people in on the southern border? It's a national security issue on that level. The other thing that's really troubling to me, Buck, people that are advocating that we don't fix our southern border crisis, I'm only left with the conclusion they truly hate America. They hate the American people. They hate the American taxpayer, because only someone that despises the American taxpayer and the American voter would actually allow this to continue. And basically say, for all intents and purposes, we're no longer a sovereign nation because we can't enforce our borders. Therefore, the American constitutional republic, well, I think that's in question as well. I mean, if you can't have enforceable borders, how on earth can you call yourself a sovereign nation moving forward? It's insane.
Ned, is the Democrat Party going to pay a price for this, you think, in a meaningful way in elections? I mean, the only check, it seems, on what the executive branch is doing, which we are just sitting here talking about, based on the numbers, based on the reality, is making it as appealing as possible for people to try to come into the country illegally and game our immigration system. And there's no interior enforcement to speak of, not really. And so if they get here, they're good to go. They know that. We saw what happened with the Haitian migrants. More than half of them led in the United States. There's no realistic prospect of any of them being deported once they're in the United States. The American people are starting to see this, I feel like, in larger numbers. They're understanding what's going on. Where is the country on illegal migration? I mean, do we have some sense based on the data as to whether this could lead to a wipeout for the Democrats in the midterms?
You know, based off some of the data I've seen, Buck, I mean, this is obviously still an extremely important issue, obviously for the Republican base. I mean, this is the entire argument for why Trump was elected. If you think about one of his top issues was immigration, I'm going to solve the southern border crisis. It's not gone away. I mean, I even talked with many in the Republican base and people that are running for office in 2022, and they tell me across the board, election integrity is the number one issue. Number two issue is immigration. And I've seen numbers with independents that have a real problem with what's taking place. Again, going back to my basic argument of where are these people going? Do we not have a process by which we actually allow people in? Are we actually a sovereign nation? So I think that with the independents and Republicans, I think this will be one of their top issues in 2022. You know, with the Democrats, I think you get some of them, but let's face it, the far left has eaten the Democratic Party from within. There's not many sane people left over there.
Feels like the Texas state government's having to step in here in a big way to try to prevent the flood from just completely overwhelming Border Patrol resources and the federal government side of it, which, as we know, is essentially just trying to process all the illegals who are coming in. That's the Biden approach. Here's the Texas Attorney General, Paxton, talking about the preparations they're trying to make.
We're spending more money on border security than we've ever spent, and that number just keeps going up. But it's our only way of having any impact at all on this illegal border situation. The Biden administration is not trying to follow federal law. They're not doing that in any possible way. Their goal, it seems to me, is to get as many people into this country illegally over the next 3.5 years as they possibly can.
I mean, Ned, it just feels like it's so obvious at this point, right? That is the goal. Otherwise, what are they doing?
Absolutely. And the thing that I keep coming back to, Buck, is federalism. You know, there's 23 trifectas in this country, which we have Republican governor, a state Senate majority, and a state House majority. Republican governors need to put federalism into action and say, if the federal government will not act to secure our border, and this is a national issue, right? This isn't just Texas or the border states. We're going to actually help Texas and the border states seal the southern border until the federal government will actually take this issue seriously. So my hope is that there will be many more governors. I know DeSantis and others have stepped up and said we'll send resources, but I would hope that at least 23 Republican states would send resources to the southern border and say, if the federal government won't act, we will. It's federalism in action. We're doing this on behalf of the American people and the American taxpayer. End of story.
Ed Ryan, always good to see you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Buck.
Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema is under fire from the left as illegal immigrant activists chase her into a public restroom over the weekend. Well, the video for you and commentary from our friend Rob Smith from The First TV. But I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money. Crypto market's hot. A lot of these digital currencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, could be on the beginnings of a big run up, right? But you got to get in now. How do you get started if you've never bought crypto before? That's why you need My Digital Money. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with incredible customer service, which is key. They're one of the few US-based crypto companies that'll answer your phone call and help you get started. And they want you to be comfortable and have total security for your coins. They have amazing options to make sure that you know what you're doing, you feel comfortable with it, and if you got any questions, they'll pick up the phone. You deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. Nancy Pelosi has set a Halloween deadline for a vote on the infrastructure package, but far-left Democrats are standing their ground on making sure the Senate passes the $3.5 trillion social spending bill first. As the party remains divided on the price tag, progressive activists are becoming bolder with their demands. Over the weekend, protesters stalked and harassed Democrat Senator Kyrsten Sinema following her into a ladies' room stall at Arizona State University. Watch.
I'll be back.
Sit down, we want to talk to you real quick. Can we talk to you real quick?
Hi, actually, I am heading out.
But right now is a real moment that our people need in order for us to be able to talk about what's really happening. We need a Build Back Better plan right now.
We knocked on doors. We need solutions to the Build Back Better plan. Need has the solutions that we need.
We knocked on doors for you to get you elected, and just how we got you elected, we can get you out of office if you don't support what you promised us.
We need 7 million citizenship for 7 million. We need the Build Back Better plan right now.
Here with reaction, Rob Smith, host of Rob Smith is Problematic. Rob, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, Buck.
What's your first reaction when you see a sitting U.S. senator of either party followed into and recorded while she's in a bathroom stall by people demanding amnesty?
My first reaction is that it's obviously disgusting and uncivil. And, you know, I've seen that video a couple of times, and this is the first time that I think that I've really noticed that there was a man behind the camera. You were hearing his voice in the camera. So this is a male progressive activist following a female senator into the bathroom and harassing her because she doesn't do what he wants her to do, which is actually quite insane. But I got to tell you, Buck, you can draw a direct line from what just happened to Senator Kirsten Sinema to the language that was coming from the left. Remember back in 2018, you had Maxine Waters say about the people in the Trump administration, you say, make them uncomfortable, get in their faces, make them uncomfortable in public, all of this other stuff. So this is the stuff that the progressive left has wrought, you know? And so now the chickens are coming home to roost. And I have to say, even though I do not condone this in any capacity, I have to say that I have zero sympathy for these people because this is what they have pushed for from the progressive left.
Interestingly enough, Rob, Senator Sinema put out a statement on these activists. This is what part of it read. Yesterday's behavior was not legitimate protest. It is unacceptable for activist organizations to instruct their members to jeopardize themselves by engaging in unlawful activities, such as gaining entry to closed university buildings, disrupting learning environments, and filming students in a restroom. But Joe Biden spoke out on this today, and here's what he said about the harassment of Kristen Sinema.
Do you think that those tactics are crossing a line?
I don't think they're appropriate tactics, but it happens to everybody. From the only people it doesn't happen to are people who have Secret Service standing around them. It's part of the process.
Why it happens to, first of all, it doesn't happen to everybody. I've never seen somebody who's a sitting U.S. Senator, member of Congress, recorded in a bathroom stall before. But why does Biden decide to throw that in there, do you think?
Look, I think that this is what I have to say. You have not heard anything about this from any of the squad, right? You know, AOC hasn't put out a statement, Ilhan Omar, all these people. I think that there is a part of him that kind of condones these tactics, okay? Because I think that with Joe Biden, along with the rest of the progressives, they condone all of these tactics because they think that it's going to help them with their goals. And the thing about it is this, they have to distract these progressives and these leftists from the fact that they own basically right now the White House, the Senate, and the Congress, and they are getting absolutely nothing done. And they want to make it seem like, oh, it's just Republicans that are standing up against the agenda. Oh, or it's just Manchin and Sinema. When the reality is that these people have every lever of power they can actually have in American society, and that they are failing on absolutely every level. So I think that there's an element of Joe Biden and there's an element of some of the other progressives on the left that like this behavior. They condone it because they think that it brings them more power, and they think that it's going to put more pressure on Kirsten Sinema to vote the way they want her to vote.
Here's the activist, actually, who responded after following Senator Sinema into the bathroom. One of the activists wrote, "I'll speak about the controversy regarding following Senator Sinema in the bathroom when I have the time. None of you have the right to tone police my desperate demands for labor protections after what I have endured as a human trafficking survivor due to the effed up gig economy. So I won't address it, but I'm the real victim here." I feel like that's actually a classic left-wing response.
It's a very classic left-wing response. And look, human trafficking is terrible. My heart goes out to all the survivors, even this person. But that does not excuse with the fact that what this person did is absolutely wrong, and this should be condemned by people on both sides of the aisle. This is a sort of weakening of the civility that we used to have in American politics. And I'm telling you, Buck, it makes me very uncomfortable and fearful for what is next.
You know, Rob, it's not just Sinema who was harassed. Over the weekend, there were people on kayaks out harassing Senator Manchin on his boat. Now, I mean, this one is a little more, look at this. You can see it here. Don't sink West Virginia. Somebody has said, okay, look, this stuff about this is not following somebody in the bathroom. So I'm going to say, you want to hold up signs, it's fine. I'm not opposed to it in principle, right? People do have a First Amendment. Totally. Okay. But they're going after Sinema and Manchin, following them, pressuring them in general, because I think they believe that a pressure campaign brought to individuals in their day-to-day lives could actually work. And they know that if Sinema and Manchin go along with the $3.5 trillion, it's a game changer for the Biden administration. So, I mean, do you think that they might actually get these two senators to cave, which would have an enormous impact on the Biden agenda because Congress will be able to get through a multi-trillion-dollar reconciliation left-wing goodie package?
Well, look, do I think that they're going to get them to cave on this particular bill? No, I think that there's going to be probably a slimmed-down version of this that's still going to get passed, so that Sinema and Manchin will eventually vote on. But I think that the left-wing activists and the people in the party that think that putting this types of pressure on Manchin and Sinema is going to work, I think that they're right. Look, Manchin and Sinema are getting pressured from everybody, from the left-wing news media is calling them Republicans. I think Don Lemon over on CNN called them Republicans. They're getting hit by John Oliver. They're getting hit by Rachel Maddow. They're getting hit by all of the sort of darlings of the left-wing media. And obviously that is not hurting, because that's not helping, because you can just tune that stuff out. But, what they can't tune out is people actually coming to them and putting a pressure campaign on them in person. Now, granted, like I said, I will never condone what happened to Senator Kyrsten Sinema, but the tactics that they use for Joe Manchin, I have to say, as somebody that wore the uniform for people's right to protest freely, and you serve the country as well in the CIA capacity, in order for us to have these freedoms, I think that the Manchin protest is actually kind of clever, probably something that I may have done, back in my left-wing activist days. But look, following someone into the bathroom is bad. I do think that there is some version of this bill that will eventually be passed in order to placate the progressives, unfortunately.
Rob, always good to see you, man. Thanks for sharing your perspective on it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, bud.
Maricopa County, Arizona recently finished its audit of the 2020 election results. So what exactly did we find out? Coming up, we'll talk to a former commissioner on the Federal Election Commission, Hans von Spakovsky, about what we learned or didn't learn from the audit. But first, I want to talk to you about protecting yourself from online criminals. Did you know the Social Security Administration's computer servers are 45 years old? Or that the computer servers at Health and Human Services are 50? Maybe that's how cyber criminals hacked U.S. Census Bureau's computers, where everything about you is stored. The threat of some cyber thief stealing your credit card isn't your biggest risk. Your massive risk is that he takes over ownership of your home. It's called home title theft, and the FBI calls it one of the fastest growing cyber crimes out there. It's really simple. Cyber criminals hack into vulnerable government, bank, or mortgage company servers where copies of your home's title are stored. He forges your signature stating you sold your home to him. Then he borrows on your home, leaves you in debt. You won't know until collection notices start showing up. Protect your most valuable asset. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Use promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. Maricopa County, Arizona recently completed its forensic audit of over 2 million ballots cast in the 2020 election. The hand recount essentially matched the machine count from last November, but slightly widened Biden's margin of victory by 360 more votes than the certified results. Many on the left were quick to hail the results of the audit as the final blow to claims that there was widespread fraud or irregularities during the presidential election. But at least one former commissioner for the Federal Election Commission is saying that isn't the end of the story. Writing in the Daily Signal, Hans von Spakovsky notes, the Maricopa audit lists some disturbing findings. That includes 23,344 mail-in ballots voted from a prior address, 9,041 more ballots returned by voter than received, 5,295 voters that potentially voted in multiple counties, 2,592 more duplicates than original ballots, and 2,382 in-person voters who had moved out of Maricopa County. For those keeping track at home, that's potentially over 40,000 irregularly cast ballots in a single Arizona county. Joining me now is former FEC commissioner and senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky. Hans, good to see you.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so the audit showed that the totals that were certified in Arizona in 2020 were more or less accurate, but what else did the audit show? I mean, what's the main takeaway here?
Well, the media just concentrated on the mainstream media concentrated on the fact that the hand recount matched the machine count from last November. But all that means is that the ballots that were cast were properly counted. That does not look into the fact of were those ballots actually cast by eligible individuals. And that audit report, as you detail, has some very disturbing findings. I mean, just picking on one of them, almost 5,300 people who may have voted in multiple counties. If that's correct, then that indicates that 5,300 individuals may have double voted and cast 2 votes in the election. The only way you're going to determine any of that is if you actually now start an intense investigation in which, for example, you pull the voter files of each of those individuals, check to see, are they actually registered in more than one county? And yes, did they actually cast more than one ballot? Some of that may be true, some of it may be not, but we're not going to know unless you actually investigate.
Now, when we have things like, for example, more ballots returned by voter than received, or voters that potentially voted in multiple counties, is it, because there were thousands and thousands listed in the report that may have fallen into those categories, is it possible to track that down at this point if the state of Arizona so chose?
Some of it is. Certainly, they can easily find out whether individuals were registered in more than one state, more than one county, and registered twice. They can also find out, remember, one of the figures was 23,000 individuals who they said voted from a prior address. Well, you can certainly check the address and find the current address of those registered voters who cast that ballot and see whether that's true or not. So yeah, you can investigate that. Some of it you can't, but those are big ticket items that can be looked at.
Now, under Arizona law, I believe there are other states where if you vote in a county in which you are not registered, that vote is not supposed to be counted. What's the situation in Arizona?
It is, and for anybody who thinks that's not a serious concern, remember about a month ago, the Los Angeles district attorney actually criminally arrested half a dozen individuals in Compton, California for doing exactly that, registering in Compton when they don't actually live there. And that made a difference in that city council election, an election won by 1 vote.
That's unbelievable. Hans, what are the biggest outstanding questions that you have right now about Arizona? I mean, for people who feel like this isn't over, they just have a funny feeling about it. There are a lot of folks out there that have thought that for a long time now. Where do you, based on the facts and the law, where would you want to direct inquiries?
I would direct local election officials with the help of law enforcement to begin pulling the file on each voter listed in the audit report who did something like may have been registered in more than one county, may have voted from an address where they no longer live, and they need to investigate every single one of them to make sure and to find out whether they illegally cast a ballot. Then they need to do 2 things. One, fix the administrative problems that allowed that to happen in the first place. And second, if someone intentionally registered twice and voted twice, they need to be prosecuted again to make sure that doesn't happen in future elections.
So, Hans, this is so essential because it seems like one distinction being drawn here is between irregularities in the voting and outright fraud. You mentioned that if people intentionally did this, that obviously that can be prosecutable, but it sounds like there may be thousands and thousands of people in Arizona and perhaps some other key battleground states as well who thought they were voting legally in the 2020 election, but did not. Now, that wouldn't be because they would lack the mens rea, the intent, right? That wouldn't be a criminal offense necessarily, but their vote isn't supposed to count under the law. Am I following this correctly?
Yeah, you are following it correctly. And just another quick example of that, there were over 2,000 ballot duplicates listed for which they apparently can't find the original ballots. Duplicates are when the original ballot can't be read by the computer scanner. And so election officials are supposed to create a duplicate ballot by basically copying the exact choices the voter made in the damaged ballot. Well, you have to be very sure that you're not producing more duplicates than the original ballots, and yet that seems to have happened in Maricopa County. Why? Sloppy procedures by election officials.
I mean, Hans, you're a former FEC commissioner. What you're seeing in Arizona from the 2020 election, is this beyond the normal irregularities that you would expect?
I wouldn't look. You always get mistakes and errors in elections, sometimes made by election officials, sometimes made by voters, but not to the extent that this audit report reveals. That's a pretty big number of potential votes that maybe should not have been cast. I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands of votes, enough that if this was proven to be correct, it could have affected the outcome of the election. We won't know the answer to that unless and until they do the kind of in-depth investigation that's needed.
What has to happen, Hans, for Arizona to do that investigation? Who makes that decision? And do you think it'll happen?
The Attorney General's office has said that they want to investigate, but it's pretty clear Maricopa County officials don't want to. You know, they refuse to cooperate with this audit in the first place. They've also been on the bandwagon of saying, see, we told you so. You know, the count came out the same. They clearly do not want to look into this, I think, because they're embarrassed. Because this audit shows just how badly they ran the election, and they don't want to do anything to give any credence to the findings that were in the audit report.
Hans, we'll continue to look at this going forward. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You might not be able to spend Christmas with your family, according to the almighty Fauci, but he's apparently allowed to travel around with a production crew filming a documentary. We'll play you the trailer of a, quote, unprecedented portrait of one of America's most vital public servants coming up. Right now, I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money. Crypto is hot, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, so many digital tokens out there, and they can have stratospheric rises very short period of time. But how do you get started in investing in them, right? That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with concierge-level customer service. It's one of the few US-based crypto companies that will answer your phone call and help you get started. Because your comfort and security is their absolute top priority, they'll offer you an unparalleled military-grade security, a play money account so you can test the market, and of course, they even have trigger orders so you can secure opportunities or limit losses without having to watch your account all day. Crypto's heating up. You need professionals who have your back and will speak to you honestly. That's My Digital Money. Go to mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back with Quick Hits. A preschool teacher sings a cringy mask song to a classroom full of toddlers, and protesters at a women's march say the GOP is a hell of a lot more dangerous than the Taliban. Wow. Isn't America lovely these days with the leftists running around? It's time for Quick Hits. Let's first get to this. Let's just preface this by saying that there are already a number of European countries that have come out to say masking up kids in school is pointless, is counterproductive, is even harmful. You could argue it's a form of child abuse. I would argue it's a form of child abuse. It's completely insane. But that doesn't prevent the leftists out there from trying to indoctrinate the youngest kids possible about the need to mask up and how they should mask up forever or else they don't take the virus seriously and they don't believe in science and all this other nonsense. Here's a preschool teacher filming herself singing this cringy mask song to toddlers who are, of course, wearing masks.
I wear a mask to school. I wear a mask to school. Hi ho the Dario. I wear a mask to school. It helps to keep me safe. It helps to keep me safe. Hi ho the Dario. It helps to keep me safe.
I mean, you could take like Al-Qaeda detainees and play that on a loop and they would tell you anything you wanted to know about their terrorist plotting just to make it stop. I think that's probably true. But yeah, maybe we shouldn't be indoctrinating kids at such a young age with this whole mask nonsense. Maybe we shouldn't be masking up children, period. Then we wouldn't have to sing songs to try to justify, in the heads of adults at least, why they're masking up kids in the first place, which as we know is insane and they should stop. The Women's March happened. That's still a thing that happens apparently. I didn't even know, but here we go. There were some protesters at a Women's March, though. If you want to understand who the progressive left views as the real threat, and a real threat to women's rights, for example, well, just listen to what they say.
Who would you say is more dangerous, the Taliban or Texas Republicans? I would say both.
GOP is a hell of a lot more dangerous than the Taliban.
All right. Do I think they're equal in their hatred and control over women? Yes. Who would you say is more dangerous, the Taliban or Texas Republicans?
Texas Republicans, because this is our country. Texas Republicans.
Oh, okay.
Every day.
You know, the Taliban's oppressive to women, and this Texas law is absolutely oppressive to women. Right now, the Texas Republicans are right up there with them.
Yeah, right. The Texas Republicans, just as bad as the Taliban, that beat women in public for showing a little too much ankle. I mean, it's crazy, folks. But this is what the left believes, so it's important you understand that the demonization of those who are their political opponents is the single most important thing to them. All this other stuff is quite second. Or these external threats, oppression of women around the world, other countries, other cultures. It doesn't really matter to them. It's about power here in America. Speaking of people who want power in America, Fauci, a little fascist, he's running around now. They're making a movie about him because, oh no, he's not some kind of a iconic figure of almost religious significance to the left now. No, he's just a lowly public servant telling you about the science, say the idiots. Here's a trailer for Fauci, an unprecedented portrait, they're calling it, of one of America's most vital public servants.
When I think about my dad growing up, I certainly think about that seriousness. But very few people get to see. He's funny, weird, and really playful.
God help us. In 1981, HIV/AIDS was evolving rapidly and frighteningly. There was anger at the government's response.
When you got sick, you were gone fast.
It's affecting you now. Yeah.
Why?
Post-traumatic stress syndrome.
When COVID hit, he became this target.
My dad said, we're gonna get through this whole thing, and he's held that.
You don't do it because you want to make money. You don't do it for the glory. You do it because you care.
Yeah, this is what you'd call hagiography, turning him into some kind of a saint, because that's the whole point, right? How could you argue with Saint Fauci? So they make documentaries about how amazing he is with the stirring music and everything, and they probably will leave out of there when he admittedly lied to you about masks at the start of the pandemic, or all the times when he said the wrong thing, or when he bent the knee to the teachers' unions and masked up all your kids in schools, or shut down schools because the teachers' unions wanted it. Or, yeah, they don't want you to know that he's a tool of the left. That's for sure. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Shields high.